morning. Everybody awake? Really? I don't know, it's pretty early for me. Really excited to be here. I am thankful that to be in Texas. I actually came and went to the Dallas game the other day. I'm born and raised in North Carolina, so it wasn't the best outcome for me. But it was okay. We had a great time. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story and some of the things that I've gone through. Hope there will be some nuggets along the way that will help improve you, whether it's at work or in your community or at home, and share some crazy stories, some funny stories. But I'm going to start back a little bit further and go back to my life growing up. It was, let me get through this. There we are. But I was born and raised in Lumberton, North Carolina, little tiny town in North Carolina, and I won't go through my whole slideshow of my whole life, but I do have an 8-hour VHS tape that my grandfather gave me when I was 18 years old that was entitled, "This Is Your Life." Literally every sporting event, every birthday, every coming out in my mom's arms out of the hospital, everything that I ever did, he put together to music, like some of the worst old 50s music is what he liked to hear. So that's what he put on this videotape, but handed it to me and when I was 18, which was really, really a cool gift. And so I brought it. If y'all don't have anything to do this afternoon, we can kind of sit around and watch it. But my kids love it, let me tell you. But I grew up with two amazing parents, and I don't take that for granted. I know that that's not always a commonplace, but really had great, great guidance growing up. My mother taught special needs kids for almost 30 years, and to be around that population of kids and young adults, it's life-changing. It really is. Being able to go to Special Olympics every single year and be able to just share those moments and just experience what life is like in a different window. And but growing up, my dad was who I wanted to be like. I mean, he literally was my idol. Still is today. Still a great, great man. And if I could be half the man that he is, I'm certainly on my way. But he was a 3-lettered athlete in college. He ended up coming back and become a coach. And so I was a little toe-headed kid that would run around with him at practices, wanting to be just like him, wanting to be just like his athletes. And I mean, early on, I knew exactly what I was going to do for the rest of my life. If at 15 years old, if you asked me what the rest of my life was going to look like, I could tell you exactly where I was going and what I was going to be doing. Who here at 15 thought they had it all figured out? All right, a couple of you. And you thought you'd be right here today, right? This is exactly what you thought you'd be doing. So listen, I was going to play college football, pro football after that. There was no question in my mind that's the way I was going to go. Now, kids have big dreams of playing professional sports, and I understand that, but sometimes our bodies don't really keep up with these dreams, and so we have to take other paths along the way. But for me, things were really starting to go the way I wanted them to. At 15 years old, I was 6'3", weighed 200 pounds, had a size 13 shoe, so I grew really fast. Now, that did not make me fast. At that age, I was like a newborn giraffe for a couple of years, trying to just keep up with my body and trying to catch up with my height. But even as a freshman in high school, I was the MVP of my basketball team, MVP of the football team. I scored every touchdown we scored that entire season for the football team. Sounds impressive, except for the fact that we lost every single game that we played. We were literally the worst football team in the state of North Carolina. When you have the coaches from the other sideline just yelling, "Hey, just guard 80. That's all you have to do, just guard 80. So I'd have 3 of them running around with me on the field. But I was already starting to be recruited by some ACC schools to go play college football, so my plans were going the way I wanted them to, man. Everything was great. Life was wonderful. Now, one of the other cool things about having parents as teachers and coaches is that we would pack up everything we had during the summers and move to White Lake, which is a little tiny lake in North Carolina, and literally just the coolest place ever because you could walk out 200 yards in the water, not be over your head, crystal clear, sandy bottom, it's a dream to grow up on. And so I started water skiing when I was about 4 years old. Started barefoot water skiing, which you see in the bottom picture, about 10 years old. And then I joined the White Lake Ski Hills, which is a professional water ski team. And so we would travel around during the summers and do these ski shows at all of these lakes. And it was just literally heaven. And so all of the acts were done by kids. And so 8 to 18 years of age, all these kids we'd be practicing these acts all week long. And then we'd go to these lakes and perform like Cypress Gardens shows. If you haven't seen Cypress Gardens, maybe you've seen Jaws 3 before when the shark chases around the pyramid and everything in the show. That's kind of the same things we would do. And so Very family-knit organization, really, really close-knit. Our parents would drive the boats and teach us the acts and call them out and make costumes for us. And so it was really a neat place and a neat way to grow up. Americana at its finest, really. But we were asked to go to this little tiny lake in North Carolina called Tucker Lake, and it was June 23rd, 1991, and that is the whole lake. I know that looks like a pond to most people, but that is literally the whole lake. It is very, very small. Never in the history of this lake have they ever had boats on it before. Never. But the people of this town wanted to hire this huge ski team to come in with our 6 big, powerful ski boats and about 50 ski members and all of this big parade and wanted us to do this show. And so we were excited that morning. I'm running through the house completely barefooted, trying to find my shoes, trying to get packed up that morning, and forgot that the coffee table in my living room was sitting there. It's been there my whole life. I have no idea what I was thinking. Rounded the corner and kicked the coffee table as hard as I could. Took my pinky toenail and it peeled it all the way back up off of my toe to literally the nail standing straight up in the air. That is a painful, painful situation. Let me tell you, I had a heartbeat in my toe. I don't know if you've ever had a heartbeat in your toe before, but it's literally throbbing, bleeding all over the place. Here's the worst part of it is the nail didn't come all the way off. It's literally hanging by a thread of skin, and it's just kind of flapping in the wind a little bit, and it's just awful. The rest of my day, I got to take these tight rubber ski boots, and I got to slide my foot in them, and this nail's flapping around, and it's just no way, man. And so I was very upset because I'm not going to be able to go to the ski show. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. But my dad's a tough dude, man. He is the son of a turkey farmer, and he's just as red as they come at times. And he sat me down and he said, son, we got to take care of this. I said, okay, Dad, I trust you. What we got to do? He proceeds to hand me a pair of pliers. I don't know if you know where this is going or not, but he says, son, we got to take that thing off. It's not going to last. It's not going to grow back. So I want you to just take the pliers, grab the nail as tight as you can, and just snatch it off. He said, it'll feel like pulling off a Band-Aid. I'm like, are you crazy? There's no way. This already hurts 10 times worse than a Band-Aid. And I don't take off Band-Aids. I stay in the public pool till they come off. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But man, I had to be a tough guy, man. I was always trying to be tough in front of Dad. I had to be an athlete, so I grabbed that nail as tight as I could, and every time I got ready to snatch it off, I kept dropping the pliers. I couldn't do it, man. It hurt so bad, and I was starting to question my own manhood at this point. And so he says, son, I got an idea. Now, I told you he's a problem solver. So he went and come back, and he hands me a pair of vice grip pliers. And he says, son, you don't even have to hold on to these. Lock them and clamp them on the nail and just throw them across the room. Pop it right off. I'm like, man, I swear my dad loves me. I know, but had we had cell phones in 91, he'd have been like, go ahead, son. It's not going to hurt. Just videotaping the whole thing. But I couldn't even do that. I just could not do it. And so I went underneath the sink and found some redneck chrome. Who knows what redneck chrome is? Duct tape, yes. All right, I knew there was a redneck somewhere in here. So I took duct tape, a long strip of it, and I pushed the nail down. I just wrapped it. Because I watched MacGyver growing up. He fixed almost everything with duct tape, thinking this is all going to grow back together at some point. And so I wrapped it with duct tape, and it worked, man. I stopped the bleeding, and I didn't have to look at it anymore. It wasn't flapping in the wind anymore. Now, I'd love to take that story right there and like to improve your life somehow. I'd like to make you a better leader and a better manager, a better salesperson. I have no idea how to do that. I just thought I'd share that story with you that morning. So anyway, we went to the ski show. Everything went perfectly. The last act of the day is when we built a pyramid on top of the water. So we have 5 guys and we have 2 girls and 2 boys, and we want to build this pyramid. But right before that started happening, there was a really dark storm cloud that started building up in the distance, and we could hear the thunder crashing. We could see the lightning flashing, and you know, we're athletes. We're not the smartest people in the world, but we're like, just throw us in there, man. We're fine. We're invincible, right? But our parents were a little bit more cautious and decided that I think we do have enough time to do this last act. Now, we didn't have radars in our pockets like we do today, so it's kind of hard to know how fast this thing is coming. And so they said, you know what, let's just go do it as quickly as we can. Let's knock this thing out so we can get off the water and get out of there. So by this point, the wind is starting to pick up a little bit. It's getting a little sketchy, to be honest with you. And so we build this pyramid. I know you've all done it before, but I'll teach you just in case you haven't done it. But we have a floating dock that sits in the water, and we have 5 guys that will sit there with our big skis on. And then we have 2 girls, 2 boys that day that were a little bit smaller. They'll sit on our laps and put their feet on top of our feet. We'll wrap our arms around them. And then they'll pull all 9 skiers up at one time. So we'll be skiing around the lake with somebody standing on our skis with us. And then we'll interlock arms with the guy beside us, and the girls and the boys will climb up, stand on top of our shoulders. That's how it works. I'm going to show you a picture of us going around the lake that day. That's me on the far bottom left, and it went perfect, man. We went around the lake a couple of times, and you can see the ramp being pulled off in the background. They're starting to try to gather everything up already, and we went around the lake a couple of times. The girls and the boys climbed down, and we all got up to the back of the boat, and the boat pulls back towards shore, and I don't know, maybe about 10 yards from shore, the boat turns around backwards, and we all jump out of the back of the boat. We're trying to hurry. The wind is starting to pick up. There's little white caps on the water. The lightning is getting closer. The thunder is louder, and so we're just high-fiving, man. Us kids are so happy, man. We just nailed the show. Everything went perfectly, and we're not being very helpful to the parents at all who are trying to gather up everything. And so the 2 dads are now in the boat trying to get all the ropes. If you've dealt with any ski ropes in your life, you know they're a pain in the rear end. And 9 ski ropes in the boat, 10 big skis in the boat. We're trying to get everything organized. And so the one dad is standing up. He's rolling up ropes, throwing skis back through the water. The other dad in the driver's seat spins around his driver's seat. He's rolling ropes up. The dad that's standing up knew immediately something wasn't right. You know, us kids went from just high-fiving big smiles, and the next 2 seconds of that day changed everything. Completely flipped my life upside down, my family, my friends, everyone that was there that day. And I know that sounds pretty dramatic, but when the dad standing up was rolling the ropes, he felt the boat still engaged. Like he could feel the engine still moving, the propeller still. And it startled him because when the driver pulled up, he whipped it back up. Now, I'm just going to give you a little one-on-one on boats. You know, they don't have a gas pedal you put your foot on. I know you know this. But it has a throttle. You push the throttle forward to go forward. You pull it back to go back. You want fast, you want to go in either direction. You push it or pull it. So when the driver came and spun the boat around, he pulled it up into the neutral position. Maybe somehow that day, I don't know exactly what happened, but he must have just clicked it into the reverse position just a little bit. And if you've had a boat before, that happens sometimes, you know, you miss neutral and you're kind of there. But now he's turned around and he's not at the helm of it, and he's rolling up the ropes, and the dad yells at him that's standing up, turn off the boat, it's going in reverse. Because there were 9 kids behind the boat walking back towards shore, and this boat is now moving in that direction. 450 horsepower in the middle of that boat. Really, really powerful ski boat. When he yelled at the driver, it stunned him because now the waves and the wind are blowing, and he spins around in his driver's seat, and before his hand could hit the key, his elbow hit the throttle. And it pulled that throttle completely into reverse. This boat went from 0 to wide open, running towards 9 kids in the water. As fast as it could go, 450 horsepower pushing it. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody knew what happened. It was on top of us before we knew what happened. But we got super lucky. There was only one person that was directly in line of the boat that day, and that was me. I was the only one directly in line of it. And I never saw it coming. I never really knew what was happening, but I had a reaction. I remember my body did react, and my first thought was dive to the bottom of the lake. Thinking if I got to the bottom of the lake, whatever was happening, I'd be okay from. I don't know if I heard a scream or a yell. So I dove forward underneath the water and just went underneath. And it's not the worst plan in the world if you think about it, except for the fact I was in waist-deep water and there was really nowhere for me to hide. Show what the bottom of that boat looks like. It's a bad machine. It really is. It's got a prop that big from end to end, and it's spinning with 450 horsepower, pushing it wide open. It creates a lot of suction and a lot of turbulence. And that suction grabbed me and pulled me right to the propeller and just started chopping me up, hitting me over and over and over again. I kept being thrown around like a rag doll underneath the boat. Every time I tried to pull away, it would suck me right back and continue to hit me. It was totally out of control. But I didn't have any pain underneath the boat, if you can imagine. If you laid in the bed and I kind of grabbed your feet and I just started slapping your legs and throwing them around and tossing them around, that's kind of the sensation I had. That doesn't really hurt, but you can feel it moving and you feel like you can't control them. And so I knew it wasn't good, but I had no idea how badly. And so this boat, now the 2 dads in the boat, if you've ever been in a boat before in your life and it starts moving before you're ready, you lose your balance really easily in a boat. So just imagine it going from zero to wide open without you knowing it happening. These two dads were pinned to the floorboard of the boat. They couldn't slow it down. They couldn't steer it. They couldn't stop it. There was nothing that they could do. They're along for the ride. And we had another boat that was parked on shore, and it hit that boat so hard that it put a hole into the side of the boat. And the two dads were able to get up and turn the boat off, and now the propeller stopped spinning, and I'm free from it. Now, I knew I was hit, and I knew things weren't good, but I had no idea to what extent. So my first thought was, just get some air, get out from underneath the water. Don't stand up. So I floated out from underneath the boat, and my head came up out of the water. I had to get air, and all this sounds like it took minutes. It was probably about 4 seconds. But I got air, and I came up, and my best friend Michael's standing there, and he's got this big goofy smile on his face. He's just so happy to see me because I found out that he was literally holding on to the side of the boat as it's going backwards and watches me disappear right behind it, and he's holding on for his own life. And so when I came out from underneath the boat, he's so excited to see me. And I looked at him, I said, Michael, it got me. He said, it's going to be okay. Now, he's 18 years old. Just imagine this. I'm 15. And he reaches underneath the boat and grabs me and starts floating me out from underneath the boat. He's got his one arm behind my head and one behind my knees, and he lifts me up into his arms. And I remember looking down because I had to see what happened. You know, I was just very curious, had to see what happened. And I looked down, and I remember seeing the right leg come up out of the water. And the best way I can describe it to you, it looked like somebody took a stick of dynamite, put it inside the leg, and exploded it from the inside out. It was completely filleted wide open. Bones were sticking up in the air. Blood was shooting 3 feet in the air. I got more details if you want them, but you get it. It wasn't pretty. I have no idea how the thing was even still there. It was demolished, broken in 5 places. There was a foot on one end, but everything in between was just completely destroyed. I looked back up at Michael because I had seen enough. Immediately the pain kicks in, complete. I don't know how seeing the blood makes the pain come in. I don't really know how that works, but that's just how it works. And I look back up at Michael, and Michael no longer has that goofy smile on his face. He's got my blood all over him from head to toe, holding me in his arms, 18 years old. Can't even imagine. So he puts me back on this floating dock, and they've laid me down on this floating dock, and they start people just either running towards you or running in the other direction. And I don't blame anybody for either way. But I remember looking around and seeing my friends up on the hill screaming and crying and holding each other. I remember seeing the dragging the dad out of the boat. Can you even imagine what that felt like? I wrote a book, and there's a whole chapter on Carl Sherman and my relationship and how that all panned itself out. But as you can imagine, what he went through was way more devastating than what I went through because he was a father of one of the other one of the other kids. And so I'm on this dock, and they're working on me, and all this pain and all this chaos is going on around me. And I never looked back down because it was just too much for me to look at. And I'm starting to look for my parents, so I'm looking around in the crowd. I'm trying to find my parents, and I realized this was the first ski show my parents had ever missed. They were an hour and a half away at our lake house. Now, I'm under contractual obligation to my mother to tell you why she didn't make it to the ski show that day. Because she wants you to know she's not a bad mother. She literally stood up during one of my talks and was like, hell, I need to explain something here. I was like, what are you doing? She said, I just want to let everybody know I just had major surgery, and that's the reason that we didn't go to the ski show that day. We support our son and everything. I know, we know, Mom, we know. You're a good person. But I have to tell you that so I can continue with the show. So now they get the phone call. Thank God they were at the house with that big long cord that hung to the wall. You remember that? You could slam the doors on it and everything. It would never break. And they got the phone call, and so now they have to get in the car and drive. And there's no Instagramming and no tweeting and no Snapchatting and no texting to find out how things are going. 1991, we didn't even have the bag phone, I don't think. Well, we didn't. Even the Zach Morris phone or anything. They just took off and just started praying and hoping that at the other end everything was going to be okay. I can't imagine what that feels like. But I'm laying on this dock, and I'm sitting here, and I'm laying here thinking, I'm trying to control the situation. By raising your hands, who here is willing to admit that they're controlling? The rest of you are liars. I appreciate some of you raising your hands. I do. But every single one of you who didn't raise your hands are just in complete denial because you are controlling. Every single day you wake up, you got a plan for your day. You got an idea of the way you want it to go. You are trying to control your life. You're trying to control other people's too. I know you are. You ought to have goals that you look at every single day, well-written goals that you look at every single day. You ought to have a plan for how things are going, and that is controlling, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, the people that raise their hands are over-controlling. That is a whole nother conversation I don't have time for today. But I'm trying to control the situation. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to take 10 weeks to heal. They can put me back together again. I've had stitches, I've had staples, I've had broken arms before. I've been in surgery before. Listen, I played hard as a kid. I broke myself, I broke other people broke me. That's just how we did it. Most of the time it was just being stupid and trying to show off for a girl somewhere, I'm sure. But I was always hurting myself, and so I was like, listen, people come back from injuries all the time. This is going to be okay. And as I actually start to feel comfortable, minus the pain laying on the dock, I hear them start to talk and, hey, we need to get masks and snorkels. Hurry up, we got to see if we can find some. And I'm sitting there thinking, what in the world could they be interested in? Next thing they say, hey, we got to see if we can find his foot. So I immediately was like, whoa, hold on a second. Find his foot. Because when Michael lifted me up out of the water, I saw the right leg. If I could draw today, I'd draw you a picture of it. I have no recollection of anything on the left side, no visual, no memory, anything. And now I know why, because it's clean cut off, it's lost in the lake, and they can't find it. So I immediately went from control to somebody knock me out. Get a ski, smack me in the head as hard as you can, take me out of my misery. I want to go to sleep. I want to wake up from this nightmare. This cannot be real life. This can't be happening to me. And I'm just really thankful that they don't take medical advice from 15-year-olds, because me being awake was the only thing keeping me alive that day. But control is very interesting, because when you have to go through a tough period of time in your life, maybe there's a bump in the road, maybe there's an obstacle, maybe there's a challenge that you're faced with, and everybody deals with challenges. Every single person here is or just was dealing with a challenge or is getting ready to. I don't want to put any whammy on you or anything, but we always have them. But every time we get up to one of those challenges, and maybe we've been through it before, maybe we've gone through something similar, but there are those moments that if we've seen someone get through it, or we can imagine getting through it, it's a little bit easier to control. But when you're faced with a situation in your life where you've never had to deal with something before, you've never could imagine yourself getting through it, it's harder to control those things. It's harder to get the fight up. It's harder to get the energy to move forward with it. It's very scary, and that's kind of where I was at that moment. Like, I can imagine a broken leg, but lost leg, I'd never seen anyone with one leg before, never met anyone with one leg before. What does that even mean? Please get some masks and snorkels to see if we can find this thing. But I remember the first ambulance came, and they took me to the first hospital, and I remember on the way to the first hospital, I speak to a lot of groups, from NFL teams to, big conferences to school children, literally everything in the world you could imagine I've spoken to. And when I speak to healthcare providers and EMTs and doctors and nurses, it's amazing that some reason healthcare people don't think your ears work when you're hurt or injured. And so I'm laying in the ambulance, and the two EMTs are getting a little chatty as on the ride to the hospital. The one in my head yells to the one in my feet, "Hey, what's in the bag?" And this guy literally holds up a Ziploc bag and says, "Oh, it's just some body parts they found floating in the water." I'm like, are you kidding me? Can you literally just speak sign language for once in your life, like figure it out? Because I don't need to hear all of this. But I'm laying there, and they get me to the first hospital, and I can tell you that this hospital just wasn't ready for me that day. It was a little county hospital. It was a Sunday afternoon. I think one of the nurses just literally got out of their mouth, "Oh, it's kind of a quiet day today, isn't it?" And then everything went wrong. And so here I come flying through the doors, and I'm bleeding all over the place and trying to, just holding on to life. And now everybody else is covered in my blood because it's spraying everywhere, and they're trying to stop the bleeding and all of this chaos, and they're sticking needles everywhere they can stick it. And I don't always tell everybody this next story, but for some reason I feel uncomfortable with you. Ooh, I don't know about that. But I like to learn new terminology. I like to expand my vocabulary. Ben, when you're educated in North Carolina, you got a lot of learning left to do when you get out of school, okay? If you're laughing, you better be from North Carolina. No, I'm kidding. But no, I like to learn new terminology. I learned a brand new term in the hospital that day. I didn't want to learn it. I wish I had not have learned it, but I did, and I'm laying there, the worst pain I felt in my whole life. I mean, the pain of the legs and I could feel still the bones rubbing together and all of that pain, the worst experience of my life, the worst pain ever. And the nurses are literally holding me down. And I finally break free to find out what was causing the pain. And I learned the term, and it's still hard to talk about, so just bear with me. Catheter. Okay, let me just explain something to you. If you don't know what that is, bless you. I hope you don't ever find out what that is. But for a 15-year-old kid, it's super confusing, okay? Because here's what I saw happening. I saw this huge man. I mean, he's a big dude. And he had in one hand, looked like a death grip on, we'll just call him Junior for today, okay? And in the other hand, he had what looked like a garden hose in the other hand. And he is mating the two together, okay? And I'm just going to be super vulnerable with you. They didn't fit well together, okay? And he is just forced, and I'm yelling to the top of my lungs, please stop. Don't do this. Please stop. And the nurses are holding me down. I want to fight the guy, And I'm like, please stop. And they're like, Chad, he's got to do this. Just let him do it. I said, no, he doesn't have to do this. Because in my 15-year-old head, Junior wasn't injured in the accident. There's got to be something else that you can be working on instead of just torturing this. Listen, I don't know what the rest of my life's going to be like. It might be the only fun thing I have the rest of my life. I have no idea. Oh, God, I shouldn't tell all my stories. But I do appreciate what they do for our bodies. But if there's anyone that can find another port to the bladder, I will highly pay you because you can just saw my chest open next time to get to the bladder. Anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you this story. I'm not going to make you a better person. But so I'm lying on this, and so they realized really quickly, I don't know if it was because of my attitude or not, but they just could not handle me anymore. So they called Duke University to send a helicopter to come and pick me up. And so this helicopter's coming, and for some reason that day, we were flying out of the emergency room, heading toward the helicopter, and for some reason, I know it doesn't make any sense at all, we went right through the main lobby of the hospital. Does that make any, I don't think that's what they do normally. They don't care. I mean, you might come in through the lobby, but you don't go back through there all bloody and everybody's covered in blood and trying to fly out with this little kid. And so they're flying through the main lobby of the hospital. Makes no sense, but it became my first meant-to-be moment of this whole experience. Now, let me explain to you what meant-to-be moments are for me. Those moments in our lives where we go through something that's difficult or something that's hard and it's challenging, and it doesn't make sense why we're having to go through it. You think, God, why am I having to go through this right now? But maybe some time passes and you can look back on those moments and say, now I know why I went through that. It makes sense now. Maybe you learned from it. Maybe you got better from it. Maybe you grew from it. But that first meant-to-be moment for me was it made no sense why we went through the main lobby of the hospital. There had to have been another route. But the second I got in that lobby, I heard two voices screaming that I recognized. My parents ran into that lobby the same time I'm being pushed through there. On an hour-and-a-half drive, had they been 5 seconds later, they wouldn't have seen me. Had we gone another route, they wouldn't have seen me. They had to see me alive. I needed to see them. They had 5 seconds. They sprinted up to the stretcher and said, we love you. Everything's going to be okay. We'll see you really soon. Then they were pushed aside and said, get back in the car and go up to Duke. That's where he's going. I can't even imagine what that felt like. I can't even imagine what they went through. Now, I'm going to do this little activity with you today, and I want you to participate if you can. And who here, by just raising your hands, have ever wished they would have said something to somebody, but maybe that moment's passed and you don't have that opportunity anymore. Has anybody had that happen before? Oh, finally everybody's honest, okay? I love that. Everybody's been through that moment. Maybe it's not a death that you can't tell somebody something. Maybe you really wish you would have said something, but they don't have that opportunity anymore. Maybe it's somebody, one of your friends that was going through a challenge in your life, but your life kind of got in the way. You never reached out like you knew you should have, and maybe that moment's passed and you can't make that up. Those aren't good feelings. And so today is your lucky day because we're not going to ever mess that up again. Because we're going to send some text messages to some people this morning. We're going to tell them how we feel. I know that sounds crazy. Well, let's see where we're at. All right, I'm going to go to this slide right here. If you got one of these, pull it out on the table for me, if you will. And I appreciate it if you didn't bring your cell phone to my talk. I was really pulling it up, but I know you did. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to send a text message to some people today, and there's some rules to this. You don't even have to know what to type. I'm going to put it up on the screen. You literally just type it, copy, paste it, send it. That's all you got to do. Now, here's some rules. Do not take a picture of the screen and send the picture to somebody. It's not the same, okay? I want you to type it out really quickly. I don't want you to send it in a group message. It's not very personal, okay? So copy and paste it. If you don't know how to copy and paste, the youngest person at your table will help. We need somebody to come up sitting at this table. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm just teasing. That's a bad joke. Sorry about that. So here's the other rule. After you type it and you send it to as many people as you want to send it to, I want you to put your phone away. Put it on vibrate, silent, whatever, because I don't want you looking at it. Because they might be writing you back, and I don't want you to read it yet. I'm going to give you a chance to read it here in a little while, okay? So I'm going to put it here on the screen, and type it as fastly as you can, and then we'll just keep moving on. But you can adapt it a little bit if it makes sense. But here's some people I want you to think about. Okay, jog your memory. Just try to think about somebody. So maybe a parent or a child. Maybe somebody you've lost contact with. You know, life's going in different directions, and you hadn't seen them in a while. Maybe just something's telling you in your gut, hey, I just want to reach out to this person and say something to them. Maybe they need to hear something from me today. And then here's the hardest one, but this is where I've seen the most change in people's lives. And I've literally seen lives change from this one little activity. I want you to think of somebody you don't have the best relationship with right now. For whatever reason, you've gone in different directions. Things aren't good between you. And listen, I know it was their fault. It's not your fault. You guys are perfect. I know it was them that made this thing fall apart. But you're a bigger person, and what I have learned over the years is holding on to animosity, holding on to anger, holding on to all of these feelings. It only affects you. It doesn't affect them. And holding grudges the rest of your life is crazy. So sometimes it's all right just to say, hey, listen, I'm a bigger person. I'm going to say something to them, and if they respond, they respond. If they don't, they don't. That's fine. I can sleep tonight knowing that I did the right thing, and I know you guys are perfect, so I want you to do the right thing. So here's what I want you to write. Hey, I was just thinking about you. I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you. I love you. Guys, if you're sending it to an old college roommate or something, you can put comma bro after I love you. I don't know, whatever makes you feel comfortable. If you need to adapt it to whoever you're sending it to, that's fine too. But type this as quickly as you can, and I want you to send it out and copy and paste it to as many people as you want to. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to keep going on. But as soon as you send it, I want you to put your phones away. I don't want you reading them yet till we have a chance a little bit later on. While you're typing, I'll tell you a quick story. I spoke to a group, and I had a lady in the back of the audience who, after I had people start to read their messages, she got very, very upset. And for the rest of the talk, and then she stuck around after the show and came up to me after the end and came up to me and just wanted to speak, and she was still all red in the face and tell she had been crying. And I said, what happened? Who did you send the message to? I knew it had to be something. She said, well, I sent the message. She's probably in her early 50s. I said, who'd you send the message to? She said, I sent it to my mom. I said, oh, great. I said, well, tell me the story. What's going on? She said, well, I haven't spoken to my mom since I was 18 years old. I said, no, nothing? No. And I was so afraid to ask the next question, but I was like, did she write you back? And she said, yes, she wrote me back, and she told me that she loved me. Told me that she's sorry that things went the way they went, and she hopes to see me really soon. I have no idea where the rest of that went. It's not my business what happened after that. But what I do know, sometimes when we get out of our comfort zone and we tell people how we really feel and express ourselves, man, it can make the biggest change in the world. All right, I'm going to go back really quickly to the helicopter. They get ready to put me on the helicopter, and they get to it ready to slide me in, and guess what? They can't fit me on the helicopter. Now, this is not a county fair helicopter that they take little corn rides and all that stuff. And no, this is the Life Flight helicopter made to carry stretchers on it for a living. That's what it does. Here's the problem. They sent the smaller of the two helicopters to come pick up a 15-year-old kid. Well, I wasn't 15-year-old size. I was 6'3". I was hanging off the stretcher. One leg was hanging off the stretcher, just to be super clear. And so every time they slid me into the helicopter, that foot kept hitting the front dash of the helicopter, and they couldn't get me far enough in to swing the back end of the stretcher around. You want to see a panic on some people's faces? They were losing their minds. Chopper blades are flying, wind is blowing, it's loud as it could be. The pilot and the nurse are yelling at each other. The pilot yells at the nurse, hey, we'll call for the other helicopter. It'll take 15 minutes to get here. She yells back at him, if we don't get him to Duke right now, he won't make it. Another huge proponent of sign language at this point in time. I'm like, this is not good. Next thing I know, this nurse leans over top of me. She says, Chad, I got a plan to get you to Duke, but you got to trust me. It's going to be the scariest thing you've ever done in your whole life. But we don't have a choice. We're going to take these 8 straps and strap you down to the stretcher as tight as we can get you. I promise you won't fall off the stretcher. You can't fall off this stretcher. But we're going to have to take the stretcher and attach it to the outside of the helicopter in order to fly you up to Duke. It's the only way we can get you there. Right? I mean, that sounds like something from MASH. I don't know if you watched MASH before. But what I will tell you is she did not say that. I just made that up. I'm just totally kidding. But thank God nobody in here believed me, right? Right? That's really a bad joke because you're starting to trust me now, and now I just blew it all open, and you don't trust anything. I made this whole story up. No, I'm just kidding. It's a true story. But here's, so anyway, when this all happened, like I wrote my book 2 years ago. So thankful it went a national bestseller in just a few days. But when this all happened, my mom has kept up with people in the journey along the way. And so she sent copies of the book to several people. And she sent it to this Life Flight nurse. And this Life Flight nurse calls me like 2 days later. She gets my phone from my mom, and she says, Chad, it was just unreal. Everything you described was just so perfect. It was awesome. She said, but there was something missing in the book, and I wish I would have told you. And I never told you, and I never told your parents about it, and that's probably why you didn't have it in there, obviously. But when I landed at the hospital that day to come get you, I went into the emergency room, and I started looking at you, and I started looking at your vital signs and your charts and everything that they were recording. And I can tell you in 20 years of Life Flight and 30 years of trauma nursing, she said, I've never seen someone with your vital signs that ever lived. Never. You are as good as dead right there on that table. In my mind, she said, there was no reason for me to put effort into this. He's not going to make it. But as a nurse, that's not what we do. We do everything that we can. We just fight to the very end. She said, but I knew that you weren't going to make it. There was no medical reason in the world that you should have lived. And I told her, I said, dadgummit, that would have been an awesome line for the book, man. I would have put that on the back cover. That sounds amazing. So I may have to change the cover of the book, I guess, to put that in there. But I met her a year later after the accident. She said, Chad, do you remember what we went through to get you on that helicopter? I'm like, yeah, I remember all of it. She said, do you know what you said to me when I told you that we had to flip you upside down in the stretcher? Do you remember what you said? I'm like, no, ma'am, I have no idea. She said, you looked right at me in the face and said, don't worry, if I fall off this stretcher, I will not run away. So I don't know if losing blood makes you funny or dying makes you funny, but she told me on the phone that day when she called me about the book, she said, listen, no matter what my medical knowledge said, no matter what your vital signs said, when you told me that stupid joke underneath those chopper blades, I knew somehow this kid was going to make it. He was just going to live somehow. I have no idea how, but somehow he's going to make it. And it worked, man. They got me on the helicopter. They got me up to Duke. I spent about 2 weeks at Duke, and they did the surgery on my legs, and they put it back together, and I'll show you the photograph of the picture. It came out This is probably maybe a week or so after I got there. It was pretty devastating. As you see, the left leg's already off. Never found it, still in the lake. I have a $100 bounty on it. Somebody can find it for me. Really, I'd love to have it back. I mean, I'm sure it's just bones, but it would be really cool to have. I send Boy Scout groups and all kinds of stuff up there with snorkels to that lake. They probably hate me because I'm sending people for the wrong reasons. But they did put me back together, and they took these 5 long screws and drilled it into the leg to hold all the bones together. All these skin grafts that you see, that mesh-looking skin held in by the staples, I don't know if you know much about skin grafts, but it's a lot like turf farming. You kind of skim off the top layer of the grass, and then they move it to a different area, and they plant it and water it and fertilize it, hope it sticks. They do that with skin. They took it off the hip, and they brought it down there and sewed it up and all this crazy stuff. But they did a great job putting me back together, and then I was dealing with infection on top of that for weeks and weeks and weeks, just really kind of a rough go for a while. But I spent about 3.5 weeks to 4 weeks in the hospital, and for the first 3.5 weeks, I wore a mask on my face. Not a Halloween mask, not a COVID mask, not an oxygen mask. Here's the mask that I wore that day, and I want to see if you recognize it. I bet you do. That's the mask I wore on my face for 3.5 weeks. That's what I like to call the I'm okay mask. I'm good. I'm fine. Somebody comes up to you today and says, hey man, how you doing? Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. But behind that mask, it might not be okay. There might be things that you're struggling with, things that you're dealing with, hard times in your life. But we wear this mask thinking if we wear it, then nobody's going to know. And all my problems will go away if I just ignore them and put this smile on my face, and it'll all be okay. And I think there are good things about the mask at times, and I wore it because I didn't want to worry anybody. I didn't want to listen, I had never seen my dad cry at that point in my life. Poor man can't say a blessing anymore without tearing up. But up to that point, I'd never seen him cry before. Great father, great loving man, but just hard country man, tough. My mom cries over every movie she's ever seen. And I don't need that either. So I tried to just stay happy and positive, and I wore my mask so well to my point where my mom was freaking out. She thought I was going to go postal one day. Just literally lose it. And everybody's like, God, he is doing so well. He is just dealing with this so well. I wasn't dealing with anything. I was just hiding it all behind the mask. I was never alone. I wore my mask to try to make everybody else feel good. I was never alone in the hospital. 3.5 weeks in, the physical therapist comes to me and says, hey, Chad, I got a videotape I want you to watch. It's going to be the most inspiring thing you've ever seen. It's going to fire you up. I'm going to show you what life's going to be like. It was a videotape of amputees playing basketball. Now, that doesn't shock anybody here today because we've seen amputees and wounded warriors do amazing, crazy things with their artificial legs, climb mountains, run in the Olympics. But back in 91, I had never seen anyone with one leg. Never met anyone with one leg. And they weren't on the basketball courts balling it up in the afternoon. So they put this videotape in, and everybody in the room's like one eyeball on me and one eyeball on the video going, oh, God, I hope this works. This is going to be awesome. And about 15 seconds into it, I wish I had not seen that video. Because it didn't inspire me. It didn't fire me up. But it did show me what my life was going to look like. And I didn't like it. I remember thinking that day, I'll never, ever, ever play another sport again in my whole life if that's what I'm going to look like. Because we have a saying in the South called bless your heart. Y'all heard that before? If I said, hey, have y'all seen Sarah's hair today? Bless her heart. That's not a compliment to Sarah's hair, is it? Well, bless their heart. They barely ran. They barely jumped. They look like one-legged people trying to play basketball. I thought I was going to see Michael Jordan with one leg dunking it. I didn't know. This team couldn't be competitive against the elementary school. I knew at that point in my life that everything was changing now. Everything I ever wanted in my life, everything I ever wanted to do was never going to happen again. I was 100% convinced. That night, I told you I was never left alone in the hospital. I had a sign-up sheet on my door, had every date of my entire stay, and at the top of it said, sign up to sleep with Chad. right? Did you have that list? Did you have the same list? No, college? No. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't what you thought, aunts and uncles and cousins and all that kind of stuff, you know. Anyway, I'd usually do a West Virginia joke at this point, but I'm not going to do that. So anyway, but I was laying there that night all alone. There's one blank on my entire sheet, one blank, one night that nobody was with me. The same night I watched that video. You could call that a coincidence if you want to, but the worst night of my entire life, I was left alone. Not one nurse walked into my room the whole night. You can call that a coincidence if you want to. But I was forced to be with myself, forced to deal with my stuff. And I cried for the first time in my whole hospital stay, just bawled. It wasn't a normal cry. I describe it like middle school breakup cry. I don't know if you remember what that felt like, but I'll never love again, you know, all of this stuff. Snot bubbles coming out of your nose, wet pillows. I was throwing things. Had I been able to take my life that night, I would have, because I tried to. I tried to figure out how to do it. These morphine pumps, they put timers on them. You can't give me so much. I was too disabled to get out of the bed. I laid there that night screaming, begging for somebody to come in the room. Nobody in my family knew how I felt. You know why? Because I wore it really well. Even through all of that, wore the smile. I screamed and asked one question 1,000 times that night. What do you think I asked? Everybody just said the same thing. Why or why me? I've spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of people for 25 years. I've asked the same question everywhere I've gone, from 90 years of age down to elementary school students. I've asked that same question, and no one in any group has ever said anything but why or why me. How long's the pain going to last? Well, I'll run again. Well, when can I get out of the hospital? Those are all really valid questions I could have asked. But you all seem to know what I said that night, and you were all right. The reason you know is because you asked the same questions about your own life. Why am I going through this? Why am I having to be put through this? This is not fair. I'm a good person. I do good things. Why am I having to deal with all of this? It feels like it's always us that is dealing with things. And I should have a better answer than this for you as a motivational speaker, but sometimes life just sucks. Sometimes it's just hard. Sometimes it's unfair. But it's what you do with it at that point that makes all the difference in the world. And I remember laying there in the bed that night, and I said, I have to make a decision. What now? What do I do now? And I lay there that night, and I had two options, and I thought them both through. And the first option was just give up, quit, lay there, feel sorry for myself, become a victim. Nobody's going to blame me if that's what I choose. It'll be okay. Now, that's probably the easier of the two choices, to be honest with you. Just give up and quit. If things get too hard, just quit. But I wasn't raised to quit. I was raised to get your butt off the ground, throw dirt on it, and walk it off, and let's go. Let's keep moving forward. Let's just move. Let's go. Don't feel sorry for yourself. And those little lessons as a kid, man, it did pay off dividends. It really did. This other choice is to fight for yourself. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of courage and a lot of strength and a lot of effort to fight for yourself when things are really hard. And before you'll ever fight with yourself, you got to ask yourself two questions. One, am I deserving of it? Am I deserving of this effort? Almost everyone will probably sit here and say, yeah, absolutely, I'm deserving of it. But some people don't feel that way. Some people are like, listen, I'm mediocre. That's all I'll ever be. I'll just be what my parents were. This is just what I'm destined to do. The second question you got to ask, am I worthy of a happy life? Am I worthy of amazing things? Am I worthy of happiness? Am I worthy of success? Am I worthy of all of these wonderful things that life has to offer? Am I worthy of it? Some people don't believe that they're worthy of it. just in case you don't know, you are deserving and you are worthy of every single amazing thing that life has waiting for you. Every single one of you are. And so you should be worth the fight. And I decided that night I was going to fight, whether it was, sitting on the edge of the bed, learning how to walk again at 15, dealing with this pain, whatever is going to get in my way. I decided that night I'm going to give it 100%. I'm going to go at it as hard as I can. Because I want to see how good Chad Porter is. Now, every step of your journey of your life builds on itself. Every step of the way builds on itself. Everything you do, every choice you make builds who you are. You are who you are because all of the things you've ever done, you've ever learned, you've ever been told, you've told yourself, you are that person today. If you want to see your maximum potential, you want to see how amazing that you can be, then you got to give it 100% effort along the way, the whole way, or you'll never keep building high enough to see how awesome you can be. And I know you can't give 100% to everything in your life, so sometimes you got to cut out some things that aren't beneficial, things that don't feed you in positive ways, so that you can give more effort to the things that are important to you. But I decided that night I was going to fight. I had no expectations. I had the lowest of expectations. Nothing good is going to come out of this. Even I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I said I'm still going to fight because that's the only way I'll find out. Because you can be in the depths of the darkest moments in your life and say, I will never recover from this. I will never be okay after this. But until you fight through the whole thing, you never know. Trust me, you never know what good could come out of it. So I decided to fight. That fight ended up leading me. I ended up playing 2 years of varsity basketball for my high school. I started water skiing literally almost a year to the day after the accident. Man, I never saw any of that coming. And I didn't do anything to inspire anybody to just, be this wonderful little thing around the town. No, I just did it to have my life back again. I just wanted to be normal again. I just wanted to do things that everyone else was doing. And I'd love to tell you everything came easy. It certainly did not. I struggled and I went through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering a lot of times. But when I played basketball in high school, nobody knew I had an artificial leg. Now, I have this crazy red leg today that I wear, and that's pretty obvious. But when I played high school basketball, I had a real leg, looked like a real leg. It was shaped identical to the other leg. And it had skin on it. But I can tell you that it looked like I shaved one of my legs because you can't put fake hair on one of those legs. It looks really, really awkward. And I had the white person problem, just going to be honest with you. During the summers, I get dark, and during the winters, I get white again. And then for $16,000 a leg, I can't keep up with the shades of my life. Too expensive. And so when I played basketball in high school, I wore high socks to cover all the scars on my right leg. I wore high socks to cover my whole leg, the prosthetic leg. And so nobody knew outside of my hometown that I had an artificial leg when I played basketball. I could run as fast as everyone else, jump as high as everyone else. I led the team in rebounding. Everything looked normal. Just looked like I had terrible fashion sense because nobody in the early 90s wore the high socks. But I remember one day I was playing this game in Southern Pines. I jumped up for a rebound and I threw it out for a fast break and I fell underneath the goal. I got up and I started running again. I fell again. I couldn't move. I was like, oh my God, what is happening to me? And I realized what had been promised to me could never happen, will never happen, has never happened in the history of our company. You cannot break your prosthesis. They're unbreakable. We never in the history of our company had one break before. Well, this thing was snapped in two. And I've broken 12 of them since I started wearing them. I always try to do it a month 11, right before the warranty goes out. Works pretty well. And so I get up and I'm just hopping off the basketball court trying to get to the bench, right? And I get about halfway to the bench and the atmosphere changes. And I look back and this real looking leg to everyone in this whole gym about mid-shin is hanging straight down and doing 360s. It is flopping in ways that legs aren't supposed to bend. And I'm hopping off the court and this thing is flopping all underneath me. And the other team are running beside me going, lay down on the ground, man, just lay down on the ground. But they won't touch it because it looks really gross. They're like, oh God, just get on the ground, man, lay down. My teammates are over here laughing. Can you just imagine how terrible of a people that they look? They're laughing at this poor kid who snapped his leg in two. And then I proceeded to sit on the bench for the rest of the game with that bent up, broken leg underneath me. And these guys were running down the court going, oh my God, is this guy going to go to the hospital? They thought I was Superman. So this is me trying to teach how to be a pirate to some preschoolers. So I just wanted to pull off the peg leg pirate, man. That's the only reason I did this whole thing. I just wanted to have fun. I wanted to see if I could pull it off and figure it out. So I got the end of a crutch. I spray painted it brown. I figured I had to stick it on the end of the leg. I bought the pirate suit. I had the dreads, the hat. I put the eyeliner on. I didn't have to do that. It just looks good. I like it. It makes my eyes pop. But anyway, we taught them how to say arg and swing a sword. We had a lot of fun that day. But the impact that was made that day, I never had a clue that it was going to happen. I've seen those kids for years and years since then. That was a long time ago. My son was in that picture. He's 12 now. But they'll come up to me, man, that was awesome that day. Because I took the leg off and they got to hop around with it like they were a pirate. They got to touch the real leg, to see where the scars were. And they got to touch the scars on the other leg. And some of y'all are like, oh my God, that is so nasty. But we're going to have a touching booth out back. As soon as we're done. I have a nice table set up. No, COVID has ruined that for me. It was a big part of my whole thing. I loved it. It was fun. But anyway, we can't do it now. But I hope they never forgot it because they got to see someone that was different that day. They got to know it's okay to be different. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be different than I am. It's all right. It's cool. It made a big impact. Now, what I want you to know is that every single day of your life, you have the ability to make an impact on someone's life. You have an ability to make a huge impact on someone's life every single day, whether it's in your family, whether it's at work, whether it's in your community. Every person you pass, you have an opportunity, and you never know what those people are dealing with. You never know what struggles are going on in their head. You think you know your buddies that you're sitting here with today. You think you know their life. You think they know the problems. You think you know your spouse's problems. You think you know your kids' problems. There are things that every single one of them go through that you'll never know. Just like there's things that you're dealing with that they'll never know. So you never know when someone needs a big lift from you and when needs a word of encouragement or a smile or to sit down and have lunch with somebody who's just all by themselves. You have an ability to make a positive impact on someone every single day, and you never know how big and how far it will go. So I want you to pull out your phones quickly, and let's find out who made a difference in someone's life. I want you to see if you got any messages back. If you got a good message, I want you to stand up, if you will, and tell me who it's from and read me the message. Who's got one they want to share with us? Yes, sir.
It's a good buddy of mine, and his response was, "Are you drunk?"
Oh, yeah. I've received one of those before.
Thank you. I love you too. You had a tough year.
See, there you go. Yeah, I remember my college roommate asked me how much my bail was when I sent that to him first time. So I appreciate that. That means a lot. I'm glad you did that. Anyone else have one they want to share? Nope. Yes, sir.
So I texted my two kids. Your daughter said, "Hi, buddy. I love you too. You're the best." She's at work in the hospital right now, so just imagine her days.
I can imagine.
And my son is, "I love you too, man."
That's so cool. I love that. I'm glad you have that relation. And you know, for the people who probably got one that said, did you send this to the right person, or do you know this is your wife, that kind of thing, Maybe we should say something more. But I'll tell you that, imagine getting that message today when you're in a low point in your life and somebody sends you that message. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. It doesn't take a lot much, to do that, but just reach out to people and love on them and care for them and say the things you want to say to people because it goes a long way. I'm going to skip here, skip that one. If you struggle finding happiness, go make someone else happy and see if that helps. Man, we built this miracle field in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's a rubberized baseball field where kids with disabilities can come and play sports and do all these amazing things for the first time in their life safely. And I get to go out there and pitch and try to hit bats every once in a while. And man, it's just when I leave there, I feel every worry that I've ever had or every stress or anxiety that I'm dealing with is just all wiped away. Go find someone in your community or in your home that you can give back to and pour into and see if that makes a difference. Stop traveling. I don't mean don't come to North Carolina, I'll take you out on the boat, we'll go fishing. That doesn't mean don't not travel. But stop traveling in your mind. Be present where you are. No matter how bad your personal life is and the things that you're dealing with right now, when you come to work, you got to be there 100%. You got to leave home at home. You got to somehow focus on what you're doing. It's the only way you'll be successful. But I will tell you, I'm not saying don't come to work and ask for help. You can come to work and ask for support and ask for help, and it's okay to do those things. But don't bring the drama, because it's hard to concentrate. And no matter how bad work is, no matter how bad the stress is of the day, everything that went wrong that day, when you leave work and you go home, leave work at work. Be there present with that family and those kids. The time you spend with them is way more important than the money you'll ever spend on them. Be there for them. This is normally when I tell everybody in the room to get up, hug each other, tell each other that they're awesome. I can't do that. It's my favorite part of the whole show is when I get people to stand up and hug and just show love to each other. But hey, listen, what happens after I turn my back and walk out of here, if y'all want to hug and kiss, I don't care. It's up to y'all. But you're not doing it on my clock. I'm not being responsible for that. But there are people that you can love and support and do these things for. Change starts with you, but it doesn't start till you do. A good friend of mine, Tom Ziegler, made that quote. I just love it because I don't know what you're going through in your life right now, what you need to change, what you need to get better at, what you need to adapt in your life to be more successful. But the only thing I do know is if you don't start it now, it probably won't ever happen. You've got a few days here with some people that love you and support you, and you're all here together for a common reason, to learn and to educate and to lean on each other and ask each other questions and support each other. This is a family here. So use this time to better yourselves. Use this time to come up with a plan to fix yourself. So this is the book that I wrote. You can grab it on Amazon, Audible. If you have trouble sleeping, you can pick the Audible version because it's me reading it to you, and you'll probably be great for sleep. I don't know. But it's been a great book. It's been a great resource for people, especially those who are struggling with things or those who have young kids. I mean, it's written from middle school on up. No curse words. I do talk about junior very briefly, but you already heard that story. So if your kids can handle that, they can handle the rest of it. But it's a great book, and I hope that you'll grab it at some point. And this is my social media information. If you want to take a picture of that, I'll send you to my website. Social media, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories. Send me a message. Tell me what's going on in your life. If you need my help, if you need to ask me anything, I am always open. I'd love to hear from you. If you love what you heard, send me a testimony. I'd love to put it on my website. If you hated what you heard, just keep it to yourself. It's just a lot easier that way. But I do appreciate you, and I do appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that you're here. You're here to learn. You're here to grow yourselves. That is all feeding yourself. And what you don't have, you can't give. So take advantage of the next few days. I know there'll be some parties, and a couple guys will have a beer or two. But enjoy yourselves and bond, and please let me know if there's anything in the world I can do. If there's a group that you say, hey, listen, they need to hear your message, just reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you. But I want to thank you for being who you are, and know that you're loved and you're appreciated, and thanks for having me. Thanks.